The long-awaited story DLC for the Callisto Protocol finally came out. At least it's out now on PlayStation 5. And I lied, it's probably not long-awaited, at least for most people. But for me personally, I have been waiting for a relatively long period of time for this DLC. I enjoyed the Callisto Protocol more than most people. I actually reviewed and discussed and talked about this game a lot when it first came out. You should go check out some of those original videos that I released. But anyway, final transmission, the first, and I'm assuming only DLC just came out. I spent all day playing it and I'm about to review it for you guys, discuss it, show you some raw gameplay. But before I do that, you should consider subscribing. I talk about survival horror games all the time on this page. I just released 2 other reviews based on 2 other alien horror games, The Grey Hill Incident and Aliens Dark Descent. The latter of which isn't really a horror game, but it's based on aliens and horror fans appreciate aliens, and it is intense and creepy. But I also talk about TV shows, movies, and I do trailer reactions. But anyway, let's talk about the DLC. So first things first, there's a lot of gameplay elements that I'm not going to talk about, I'm not going to discuss in this video, simply because I already talked about them to death in the original Callisto Protocol videos that I released. So if you're interested in knowing my thoughts about the overall game for the Callisto Protocol and more in-depth thoughts about all the minor details, go check out those videos once again. But anyway, if you consider yourself a fan of the Callisto Protocol, I do think that you will enjoy this DLC, this expansion. It's not the most elaborate thing ever. It's not very innovative. In fact, it doesn't really innovate at all, if I'm being completely honest with you. It's just more of the same. But if you liked the Callisto Protocol, if you were a fan of that gameplay loop, if you liked playing through all 10 hours of the base game, this is just 2 more hours of doing the exact same stuff. A lot of the elements from that base game are all packaged into this. As a matter of fact, the very first objective in this DLC was, you guessed it, find the fuse. In fact, that was the objective at least 3 times in this entire expansion. Those little creatures in the locker that jump at you, those long-necked fucks that appear around every single corner, also make a return in this DLC. Every single enemy type from the base game, as far as I can remember, appear somewhere in this expansion, and you fight them at least once. Basically everything that the core game did throughout its 10 to 12 hour runtime, this DLC fits all of that into these 2 hours. But there is a new enemy type, and those are the biobots. Basically, they're the biophages taking over the robots. So they take the 2 enemy types and they turn them into 1. They're cool for the most part aesthetically, but you end up fighting them the exact same way as you fight all the other enemies in the Callisto Protocol. Hit, 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 dodge, 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 hit, 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 dodge, dodge, dodge. I will say that this DLC is honestly a lot easier than I remember the core game being. I played the core game on medium security, and that's the same difficulty that I played this DLC. And again, I found this DLC to be a lot easier. You find a lot more ammo, and you can use your alternative firing abilities and your guns in general a lot more than you can in the base game. At least I did. I'm not sure if that's something that the game changed in a patch that is also implemented in the base game, or if it's just in this DLC. But I can say for me personally, was a lot easier. But don't get me wrong, it was still challenging here and there. I did die a good handful of times in this DLC, and I'm thankful for that. But this expansion also has a lot of the same stressors that the base game had, especially when it comes to combat sections and the challenge that comes with them, especially near the end. The last few combat sections of this game were challenging, but again, a lot like the base game, it didn't feel like a genuine challenge. It felt very cheap. It felt like the developers just decided to throw everything in the kitchen sink at you and see what you would do. So 95% of the time that I died near the end, it didn't feel warranted. It didn't feel earned. It didn't motivate me to get better. It just stressed me out. One of the new elements in this expansion that I had a lot of fun using was the kinetic hammer, a new melee weapon, so you're no longer using the baton. You get it about 2/3 of the way through, so you actually get it pretty late, and it's really fun to use, but it does essentially turn the game into baby mode. Everything dies super fast after 1 or 2 hits, even the biobots. And unfortunately, you can't use it in the base game, which kind of sucks in my opinion. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about the story because honestly, there's not much story here. But the one thing that I will say is it's a lot more psychological than the base game was. Obviously, the Callisto Protocol dabbled into psychological horror every now and then, but this expansion really doubles down on it, and it was probably my favorite takeaway from playing this. And this does have a more legitimate ending, at least in my opinion. In the base game, the ending was a huge cliffhanger, so it kind of felt a bit unsatisfying, unfulfilling. This expansion does give you a more satisfying conclusion, but I can say, again, no spoilers, that I was not expecting this game to end the way that it does. So again, that's my brief and quick thoughts on the Callisto Protocol Final Transmission expansion. I can really only recommend this game to people that genuinely, truly enjoyed the Callisto Protocol. If in your head that game is at least an 8 out of 10, then yes, I think that you should play this expansion. But even then, it's going to come across a bit disappointing. Because, like I said before, I enjoyed the Callisto Protocol. I liked it more than most, but even I felt a bit unsatisfied with this expansion. The elements were there, the story had potential, but they just didn't see it to its full potential. Again, it repeats a lot of the same mistakes that the base game did, but a lot of things that the base game did correctly, this game also does correctly, or this expansion, I mean. But anyway, have you played the Callisto Protocol Final Transmission, or do you plan to? Let me know in the comments. And once again, consider subscribing, and thank you for watching, especially if you watch this far.